Testing. Testing. Testing 1, 2. Betty Blue blows big black bubbles. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter, so Betty bought a better bit of butter, and the butter was better. Testing, testing. 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 Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. 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 Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. Many mincing maidens meandered moodily morewards. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter, so Betty bought a better bit of butter, and the butter was better. Testing. 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 Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Many mincing maidens meandered moodily moorward. A pale pink proud peacock pompously pruned its pretty plumage. Many mincing maidens meandered moodily moorwards. Testing. 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 Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. Many mincing maidens meandered moodily moorwards. A pale pink proud peacock pompously pruned its pretty plumage. Many mincing maidens meandered moodily moorwards. The pale pink proud peacock pompously pruned its pretty plumage. Where is this noise coming from? Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. A pale pink, proud peacock pompously pruned its pretty plumage. Testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 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 1, 2, 3. Testing, 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 testing. Hi there.
Hi, this is Mike.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing fine.
Is that dialed the right number, right?
Yeah, let me get Hal in here.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey, Hal.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. We've got Mike on with us.
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Mike. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. Thanks for letting us come on this.
Awesome. No problem. Sorry it took so long to get the scheduling straight.
Yeah, it's all right. So are you guys on the East Coast or are you on the West Coast?
Atlanta area.
Atlanta. So you guys do this late then.
Yep. Yep. Kids are in bed or mostly so. That was the original idea anyway.
Makes sense.
What about you?
I'm actually in the Seattle area. So I'm pretty close
Okay.
to the mothership.
Gotcha. Yeah, I knew one of you was, and one of you were over on the side,
What?
as I recall.
Hey, Mike, for some reason it's not letting me add Jason. So either I can call you back or you can add him.
This is actually my first time ever using Skype, so I'm probably not the right one to do it.
Okay. Let me call you back in just a minute.
Okay.
Hello.
Jonathan, are you there?
I'm here.
You must be Jason.
I am Jason.
Hi, this is Hal.
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Good to talk to you. Maybe we'll get both of you on the phone at the same time, even.
Awesome.
I don't know,
That's
that might
the goal.
be too much too. We'll see. We'll see. 280 episode 288 looks like. Why do I not even remember what Kirk was on to talk about?
He was talking about the it'll come to me.
PowerShell get.
Yeah, he was talking about Git.
Yeah, he was, but like I don't know. I guess we missed a couple weeks and it's gone. It'll come back to me. Let's see. What are your names again, Jason and Mike? What's your last name?
Jason Walker.
Walker. Okay, I gotta write down so I don't forget. And let's see here.
Brett. Isn't
What's it doing?
I need to add him.
La 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 la. So, Jason, where are you based?
I'm in Tampa, Florida.
Oh, okay, cool. Been there once, one time. Hot and sticky, like the rest of Florida.
Yeah. Right now it's nice though.
Is it? Yeah, that makes sense.
It stops raining every other hour and it's dry and nice and cool.
Mike, are you back with us?
I am back. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good deal.
Should I be adding video to this thing?
Yes, you can. That would be great.
Please do be doing that.
It's on my opposite monitor, so I'm probably going to be looking in the wrong direction a lot of the time. But
I understand. I go through the same thing until I got another camera. Until Jonathan gave me another camera. Thank you, Jonathan.
Moving the windows around here.
So do we need to be like monitoring anything, like looking for questions somewhere, or like how
No,
does
we'll
this
do
work?
that. We will handle that part, but you're welcome to join the chat room. If you go to live.powerscripting.net and be sure to mute the video widget, otherwise you'll get double audio.
Okay.
But there is a chat widget there as well, which you may optionally join. Looks like the chat room is pretty light right now, which kind of happens during the, kind of heading into the end of the year. It's kind of
Not only that,
trends and patterns.
We haven't had a good track record of being consistent.
Yeah,
lately.
we haven't been as steady. But we got Mike. I see Mike Robbins in the room. And Steve Morawski and a couple other names. Pulled one person over from the PowerShell, the virtual user group. Awesome. Cool. Everybody's got video. Sweet. I got a nice screenshot.
Okay.
All right. So let's see. I already forgot. Mike, you're in Seattle, and Jason, you're in Tampa?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Trying to think like by looking at the backgrounds, of your offices, can I tell? I can't really tell.
No.
Really, Mike, your color there is actually that's a Florida color, I have to say, of that room there.
Yeah, like pea green.
Yeah.
Did it end up snowing in Seattle with this cold front?
No, I think they got a bunch of snow down in Oregon, but it was just cold up here. Or maybe it was
cold here too. It is like about 30, 32, 34, something like that outside right now.
In Atlanta?
Yes.
Yeah, that is cold.
Supposed to get down to 27 or something. I'm not pleased about this. It's all right, though. Okay, let's see. Oh, Jonathan, I did make show notes. I forgot to send it to you, though.
Oh, good deal.
Oh, no, you should have it. It's labeled episode 287. 287.
Okay, we're actually on 289.
Well, then I will rename it right now. I knew that I was going to get that wrong. There. It's now named episode 289.
Perfect.
Yes, indeedy. Welcome to those of you in the chat room. Thank you for joining us. So what do you think, Jonathan?
Everything's looking good on my end.
Yeah, rather, this was kind of easy. Knock on wood. No, virtual audio cable issues?
If they show up, I can fix them quickly. If you start hearing that crackling sound, you'll know that it will be followed by a moment of silence, and then you'll be able to hear again.
It was you. It's you, not us.
Right, yeah, that's me, if that happens. I can fix it, but it requires interrupting your receiving of audio. It doesn't show up on the recording, which is great, but it will drop out momentarily if that happens, which it usually does at least once.
That's all right. We'll figure it out. Okay. All right. We got a few people showed up. It's time. Audio's good. I guess we can get started.
Yeah, I think we're good to go.
Awesome. Everybody in the chat room, do please follow along, ask questions of the guests if you like, and the deal. So let's see here. Got my window with my show notes and all that stuff. Okay. All right. Mike, Jason, ready to go?
Ready?
Yep.
Awesome. Tonight on the PowerScripting podcast, we are pleased to have with us two PFEs, that's Premier Field Engineers from Microsoft. We have Mike Hendrickson. Good evening, Mike. How's it going?
That's going pretty good. And I'm going to say that I'm actually a consultant. It's not a PFE, but
Oh, wow. Okay.
no problem.
My bad. Is that still the title, though? What about you, Jason?
Oh,
Are you a
no,
PFE?
consultants are not PFEs.
No, I am
All right,
most
somebody's
definitely
gonna-
not a consultant.
So tell me, what is the difference? I don't actually know.
Well, I guess the consultant does more architect and deployment type work, I guess. Design, architect and design, where PFE is more of a proactive break fix type services.
Gotcha. Okay, that's cool. Well, then let's kind of get into some background of you guys before we talk about what we're going to talk about, which is some really cool work that you guys did with Microsoft Exchange and the Exchange DSC Resource Kit. But let's start with Mike. Welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into IT and your job there at Microsoft?
Yeah, so I've been working professionally in IT since '99. I joined the Marine Corps straight out of high school, and I was actually like a systems administrator and network administrator in the Marines, so got all my training there. Did 4 years and got out in 2003. Ended up in Microsoft in 2006 and started out in support. So I was like a support escalation engineer supporting Exchange Server. Eventually, I moved more into the debug side, so I was like debugging code issues with Exchange Server, like when our customers run into crashes and hangs and stuff like that, or anything else that required digging into the code to solve the problem. In the past 2 years, or 2 years ago, I moved over into a consulting role. So, mostly doing design and architecture, but I also like to do a lot of automation whenever I can. So.
Awesome. So tell me, when you're going back to the code level debugging stuff, give me an example of a session, starting with maybe a problem that you've seen and kind of walk us through that process.
Right. Well, yeah, it's been a couple of years since support, but a lot of the stuff, for crashes, it was basically, you get a crash dump, and then you have to look at it after the fact. It's post-mortem debugging. So, you get a Exchange Server crash dump. Some of the processes are pretty huge. Like the information store is one of the key processes for Exchange, and that can have upwards of like 500 threads going. So, you have to identify, look at every single thread, try to figure out, well, for a crash, you would know and you would be able to see which thread crashed. For other stuff, a lot of times you're trying to hunt down a problem thread, just trying to figure out where to start. But yeah, most of my debugging was done with debugging tools for Windows and the WinDBG tool. And then, sometimes we would have to reproduce issues. So, reproducing an issue was
That's
always
sometimes
desirable.
the hardest part.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Okay.
if we could reproduce it, then you can, debug it live, which is a lot easier. But yeah, it wasn't always the case. So.
Right. Cool. So going back to the consulting stuff, give us a little bit of taste of what kind of projects you're working on.
Well, I've actually been with the same customer the entire 2 years I've been in consulting, and I can't tell you who the customer is, but they're
Sure.
they're a very large customer. They have about 200,000 users and Exchange mailboxes. So I came on board with them. I took over from another consultant right when they were right about to start in Exchange 2010 migration. So my predecessor had written a bunch of scripts to automate the Exchange 2010 deployment and to deploy the OS, and I kind of took those over and finished them up. And I also took over a couple tools that he had written, like some C# tools that work with Exchange and Link for just automating various stuff. So yeah, I took over all those things, and then we had the Exchange migration to do, so kind of supervising that, helping out whenever issues came up. In the past year, I've been mostly focused on Exchange 2013 stuff, doing the planning for that, and basically for all aspects of it. And then lately, I've been doing a lot of automation work, and that's kind of how I got into working with DSC.
Awesome. So let's switch over to Jason. Jason, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Okay, I too was in the Marine Corps, but I went in as a mechanic working on Humvees and 5 tons. Got out, went
A
to
little bit
school,
different.
started. Yeah, a little bit different, but I did not know Mike was ever in the Marine Corps.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so started working in IT in 2008. Started at Avanade, and then did a short term there. Worked in DC as a government contractor for about a year, and then moved over to a healthcare provider there in the Carolinas, and then from there moved started with Microsoft in October of 2011. So just been over 3 years with Microsoft, and I started on as an Exchange PFE, and recently moved over to a platforms PFE. So doing a little bit of everything now.
So, and you said earlier that the difference between the consultant and the PFE is your kind of break fix scenario, and gives you kind of pulled in like SWAT team, right?
Yeah, well, for PFE, there's really two types. There's transactional PFE, and they get called in more often than not. Like I'm dedicated to
Gotcha.
a handful of customers, and I have been called in, but it's been kind of rare. It's only been like 4 weeks where like I wasn't at the customer. So like it's not like an everyday thing.
Yeah.
For the most part, I'm
Okay.
there at the customer. Putting fires out at that specific customer.
Gotcha.
No.
So
PFEs
ahead.
also do proactive things, right? Like the 80 wrap, and I know that you do. Is there an equivalent to that for Exchange?
Yeah, there's an
you guys
80 wrap
do?
and an Exchange wrap. But again, that's the transactional PFEs. They do all the
Okay.
wraps.
Yeah, I want to say the Exchange wrap was actually the first one, but I could be wrong on that. So the engine that it uses is from the Exchange Best Practices Analyzer, which is a tool that's been around for a while.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
So when did you guys start getting into PowerShell? Because I know that Exchange has been in PowerShell for longer than it was probably the first Microsoft product to really use PowerShell, wasn't it? Outside
Yes,
of
it
the
was.
PowerShell team.
Yeah, I believe I believe it was the very first product to have PowerShell. I know I started using PowerShell pretty much ever since I started, playing with computers, because it's just the power of automation, getting a lot of stuff done in a short amount of time. Is always intrigued me.
Awesome.
Yeah, I started pretty much with Exchange 2007, which was the first Exchange product to be based on PowerShell. And I was in support at the time, so I actually started supporting Exchange 2007 about 6 months before there was any content available for it. So I was actually learning a lot about Exchange and PowerShell on the fly. Didn't really get into heavy duty scripting for a couple of years, until a couple of years after that, though, because actually, when I joined Microsoft, I didn't know how to program, and I learned a couple of years after joining. So once I got into programming, I really saw the power of PowerShell.
So that's interesting. You started with IT and then got into the programming aspect and then PowerShell.
Yeah, my background, it's more on the infrastructure management side, like systems administration. So, doing Windows administration stuff. So, yeah, for the first, 8 years of my career, I didn't know how to program. And then I wanted to get in that position that I described, debugging Exchange code. So I went and took a C++ class at a community college and liked it, and then took some C# classes and ended up getting an associate's degree in software development, and now I'm working on a computer science degree. But just been slowly getting more and more into the development side.
Awesome. So did you have so that was kind of interesting. Most people, it seems that if you're a programmer, you usually start out that way. It starts with the CS degree. You don't often see the other way around. Did you see any? Was there any difficulties picking it up?
Yeah, I took a kind of backwards approach because I learned to write code so that I could debug code. So, it's kind of like when I was learning it, I was figuring out how to like troubleshoot problems, right off the bat. And it's definitely not a common path, but I want to say other people in support have done a similar path where they were in a support position for a while. They wanted to move up to the top position, which is an escalation engineer. So they had to pick up coding skills to be able to do that, but doesn't happen too often.
Gotcha. Awesome. So how did you guys meet and collaborate and start working on together on this DSC project?
Well, the customer I was at the time, they were looking to upgrade from 2010 to 2013, and me being the PowerShell guru and with DSC being the hot, sexy thing out, I wanted to leverage DSC because they have roughly 150 Exchange servers in their environment, and Mike actually sent an email out to one of the Exchange DLs internal to Microsoft asking if anybody's messed with DSC for Exchange. I don't know. I think I sent an email to him, asked if anybody replied to him back, and I think Mike said,
that was a mistake.
Yeah, he said he hasn't. No one replied to him, and I said, "Well, I'm going to start working on this." And I want to say about a month later, Mike said, "My customer's doing this, so let's put our heads together and knock this out."
Awesome. So how long ago was that?
I want to say I started working on it, I think, in May, and I think Mike contacted me maybe in June or July.
Yeah, probably July.
And I think Mike, he pretty much got it finished up, there in September.
Yeah, we actually got it finished a couple of months ago. Then it was, going through all the checks and stuff to get it released and, make sure it's not going to break anyone's environment or anything. Running it through the motions.
Awesome. So why don't you tee it up what it is that we're talking about, and we'll have links in the show notes for everybody to follow along. But I'm looking at a blog post here, Mike, on your blog, introducing X Exchange, managing Exchange 2013 with DSC.
Right.
So go ahead and tell us what we're about to talk about in more detail.
All right. Well, essentially, Jason and I put together a module for managing Exchange 2013. At the moment, we have about 24 resources that can manage different components of Exchange. And the ones we chose to focus on are ones for really managing the configuration after the fact. So like right now, we don't have a resource for setting up Exchange yet, but once Exchange is deployed, we have, basically everything most customers would want for configuring their Exchange servers.
What are some examples of some of the resources that you made?
So a big one is like the one for creating database availability groups, which is the high availability implementation for Exchange. So it's a couple of different resources that you can use to create the database availability group, add Exchange servers to the cluster, set up all the settings for that, set up different network settings for that. So that's I want to say that's 3 different resources for DAG for DAG management. Another big example, which is actually what Jason started working on. He was the first one to start working on these. Exchange has a bunch of different protocols that it uses. Most of them are HTTP based. It also has lots of virtual directories, so like Outlook Web Access, which you guys are probably familiar with.
Sure. Yeah.
Exchange Web Services, which is like a web API for talking to Exchange. But yeah, there's like 7 or 8 different application pools, and you can set all sorts of different IIS settings on them, like authentication settings, various URLs that are going to get handed out to users and stuff. And like the authentication settings, that's actually one of the key reasons why I went with or wanted to go with DSC, because a lot of those settings are prone to getting reverted.
Okay.
Since they're stored, I'm not sure if it's because they're stored in IIS, but it has something to do with them being in IIS, but they just get flipped back. So, with the DSE resources for all these directories, we can make sure that all these IIS settings stay, where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, for the clustering, would you use that resource after the cluster is already configured to ensure that it stays configured the way that you designed it, or does it actually do the configuration of the cluster? Like, because you said it was kind of an after the fact, after Exchange is installed, that you would apply these resources.
Right.
So where does that clustering kind of fit into that?
Yeah, the clustering stuff. There's definitely a lot of settings you could you could set on the cluster, and I personally haven't seen them any cluster settings get reverted. Most of the ones I've seen get reverted are the IIS specific settings.
Okay.
So yeah, you could just use it for one-time settings, but if you absolutely had to have certain settings on there and wanted the peace of mind, you could definitely have the cluster stuff in your ongoing DSC script. I kind of see it like, I don't know, for installing and configuring Exchange, there may not necessarily be a single script that you use for everything. You might have your one-time stuff where you just basically run it and set it up and forget about it, and then you have your stuff that you want to actively monitor.
Okay,
and
sure.
that might go in a different script, and that's going to be the stuff that you subscribe to via pull mode, so that your servers are continuously pulling it down.
Right. Now, did you find that you had to the resources that you wrote? Well, let me ask it this way: when you were creating your configuration document for this customer to create your MOF file, did you have a lot of the out of the box resources that you were able to use successfully, or did you have to basically create a lot of stuff from scratch with your custom resources? Because I know you can do stuff with the files and registries and Windows features and things like that with the out of the box stuff, but you obviously had to do a lot of Exchange specific tasks.
Yeah, you want to take that one, Jason?
Yeah, we had to create everything from scratch. Everything in these resources, they all use the Exchange commandlets.
Okay. So if they're using the Exchange commandlets, how does that work well, I guess you're applying it to an Exchange server, and Exchange is already installed, so the commandlets would already be there. So
Correct.
So they would work. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. For a lot of the resources, we wanted to keep the same parameters. Like, for instance, the set-OA virtual directory commandlet is used to configure an OA virtual directory, and it has like 20 different parameters. So we wanted to get, for a lot of these, have the exact same parameter set that was available for the commandlet and showed up on the TechNet website within our DSC resource.
Wow.
So most of these, except for there's a couple one-off ones and a couple like synchronization resources, but most of them correspond directly to Exchange commandlet sets.
Wow, which would make it, I would think, easier to do a configuration using those, and maybe more confusing because of the way they're set up. Yeah. With the way the parameters are kind of laid out, and the way that you have to define them isn't the same as the way a commandlet works.
Right.
It's still very similar, like Mike was saying. Pretty much all of them, but a couple of them, the nouns are the same. Like if you just take the exch prefix off, like active sync virtual directory, it corresponds to the the noun in the Exchange commandlets.
Yeah, that's really nice. So
I've just been geeking out on PowerShell get, and I installed the module while we were talking. It took like 8 seconds. So I've been iterating through the module, looking at the resources and stuff while y'all were talking.
So when you were building the custom resources, what did you learn from a troubleshooting perspective? Because I know that when I create custom resources, sometimes if there's a problem with the configuration and I'm in a pull server environment, sometimes my node will not apply its configuration, and it gets into a state where it just refuses to apply anything.
Right.
You've got to kind of kickstart it to get it going again. So what sort of things like that did you guys run across that would be helpful to other people who are writing resources?
I don't know. It's things I never, when developing these, I never used it from a pull server. I always just ran it straight from the server.
Oh, okay.
And you need to run that in debug mode so it doesn't nothing's cached in the DSC engine, because you'd make changes and then you'd run the script and the exact same thing happened again, and you're pulling your hair out, and like you would reboot your server and then all of a sudden it'd work again, and then you start looking online and you say, oh, I need to put this in debug mode, or you have to kill the WMI process that has DSC running in it.
Oh, yeah.
So what I found was that when I started working with these, I found that it was actually kind of hard to do debugging the way I wanted to do debugging, like actually within DSC.
Right.
So what I started to do was just do my initial testing outside of the DSC engine. So initially, I just wrote like a simple script to test one resource, where it would call it would load the module, call get dash target resource, with the parameters that I wanted, and then check for the return value. And that, well, actually, I usually start with set. So I run set dash target resource and just pass in everything, and then immediately run test dash target resource and see if it comes back as true. But doing it outside of DSC, at least for me, like a big thing is that I can do step through debugging. Like I really like to see where I'm at in the code and what's going on.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so that helped a lot. So we kind of started out with just like individual scripts, individual test scripts for each resource, but ended up putting them into a single test module. And it's not super structured, but we did include it in the module. So if you look in the X-Exchange module, there's a test folder, and you can see I think it's test X-Exchange, or it's something. That's what I use, especially when making like major changes. It's a good way to see if anything's gone wrong, or if you made changes you weren't expecting that's going to break your code. So with something big like this, it's good to have that to ensure consistency.
Do you use Pester for your testing?
I do not.
Okay.
Do you know about Pester?
I do not.
No, me neither.
At the MVP summit last week, we had like a tech session on Pester, just kind of diving into what you can do with it. I think we also had what's his name on the podcast too, didn't we, Jonathan?
Yeah, we have talked about it. It's a testing framework for PowerShell.
Got a name.
Is what it is.
Just met him, Dave Wyatt. Dave Wyatt.
Yeah, Dave.
Should talk about it.
Okay, I know that name, I think.
It is easily found. PowerShell Pester. Search for that in your favorite search engine. But it's basically a framework for running unit tests and driving your development. It's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
So, how much code are we talking about here?
It's a bit.
There's a good number of resources. There's 20 or so.
Yeah,
resources, a bunch of them. So I'm kind of wondering, like, how did you guys collaborate on this, and how many hours of work is this? That kind of thing.
I don't even know where to start. What
kind of tools did you use?
Well, we used Visual Studio Online for source control. We just check everything in and out of Visual Studio. We didn't put anything on GitHub. We just used Visual Studio Online.
Was this a process that you guys worked up yourself, this collaboration, or are you guys following models that that the PowerShell team is kind of suggesting for working on DSC resources?
Well, the PowerShell team, they reviewed our stuff 2 or 3 times, Mike.
Yeah, we went. Yeah,
and it was the first time they just this nonstop constructive feedback.
Awesome. So you guys were included as a part of one of the recent waves. Was it Wave 8 that yours made it in?
Yeah, Wave 8. We also got another resource that actually I just worked on the other one, but it's the X BitLocker resource. So we actually got 2 released in Wave 8.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I was just looking at the full kit, and there's a lot of stuff in there now. I think the last time that we had a few people from the PowerShell team on at various points talking about the kit as it evolved, but that was probably maybe in the like Wave 3 time frame, maybe Wave 5. But it's just kind of expanded humongously, actually.
Yeah, I want to say Wave 8 added like 50 or 60 resources, not modules, but resources. It was a big release. Yeah, I just looked, and the X Exchange module, I had written something just to count the lines of code. It was 25,000 lines, so it's not small. But a lot of that is parameters and comments and not actual code. Well, I guess parameters are actual code, but a lot of it's just stuff that we have to duplicate. So, but it's still a lot. Essentially, when we started working on this, though, like Jason said, he had I had sent out an email originally because I had for Exchange 2010, I had basically written DSC-like scripts for my customer to maintain their environment. Like we had separate configuration and verification scripts and had to maintain both of them. And I knew once I heard about DSC that that's where I wanted to go. It was going to be better than what I was doing. And I sent that email out to the DL and didn't hear anything back. And then Jason reached out to me a little bit later. And then I actually didn't start working on this for my customer until like July. So I reached back out to Jason, and he had already done like 5 or 6 or started 5 or 6 Exchange resources. So we kind of used those as a getting started point. And then from there, we kind of just planned out, what all the resources that we could possibly want would be. And a lot of those were basically trying to convert what we had done with my customer in 2010 over to DSC. And then kind of just prioritized them, which ones look easiest or, which ones do we absolutely have to get, and kind of split the load on them.
Yeah,
what would you call what is the coverage here of the routine maintenance versus the kind of less common stuff and initial configuration? What percentage of these concepts are you guys covering with the kit?
Well, other than install, it's like the 100% of the configuration. At least I know, at least for my customer.
Nice.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we've actually, for my customer, I've been able to, their configuration script for Exchange 2010 was, I don't know, probably over 1,000 lines. It was, the main one was that big, and then they had probably like 7 or 8 ones, but I've managed to consolidate all those into DSC resources and do everything I was doing before, including some non-PowerShell stuff, like stuff with IIS app command and stuff like that. But I've been able to get all of those into DSC, and then get my customer like 2 configuration scripts that they can run versus like what they had before.
So these scripts are roughly how long compared to the 1,000 lines of scripts before?
Yeah, let's see. Let me pull up my example here. It's probably for the whole thing. It's probably let's see. Actually, I'm here. It's probably about 5,000 lines, or sorry, 500 lines. I'm having trouble tracking down. Yeah, here it is. There we go. All right, opening up PowerShell. 400. So yeah, went from 1,000 in the main script, and then like 6 or 7 other scripts down to 400 lines just for maintenance.
And would you say that this is looking at this script here that applies the DSC configurations? Is it different in the sense that is it easier to understand? Is this a better way to maintain the state, just generally overall than what you were doing before?
For me, I think it's a lot more. I mean, it looks easier to read to me. Yeah, I think writing DSC resources is definitely tricky, but I don't think consuming DSC resources should be tricky. And the way it gets laid out in in the DSC configuration script just seems logical to me. Like, you know which parameters you have to configure for your Exchange commandlets, and you just find that matching DSC resource and list those individual parameters you want to do. And it's also easier to go back and it almost functions as as configuration documentation. I mean, you probably still have a separate document, but you can just look in, eyeball your configuration, see exactly what it's supposed to be from the config script. And I think, people with not as much PowerShell skills could probably do that as well.
Yeah, and I think
awesome.
I would totally agree with that. Just the way that things are laid out, rather than looking at looping structures and trying to figure out how everything is working. I mean, it's just, okay, here's the setting. This is how it's set. That's what the configuration document looks like.
Yeah. For the people that implement, they don't really have to care about how, what's going on in the background. They just have to know that, or, all they need to know is that resource is there and they can do it.
Yeah.
Or use it.
And especially if you guys basically modeled it after the commandlets. I mean, there's no guessing at that point. That's really cool.
Right.
One of the things that's really surprising to me about the way this came about, it's not surprising to me that one of the first Microsoft products that has a DSC resource is Exchange. Because of, they've had PowerShell support since, Exchange 2007, first one out of the gate. But what's surprising to me is it didn't come from the Exchange team. Right? It was built by you guys. That just seems odd to me. Did you get support from the Exchange team? Did you interact with them at all, or did you just go off and do this?
We pretty much just went off and did this. We were on calls demoing this to the Exchange team, and they really didn't express too much interest in it.
Wow. That's surprising to me.
Yeah, so when we started looking into this, we wanted to make sure we weren't duplicating anyone's work. So we reached out to different places in the company. It kind of started with the Exchange team, asked them if they knew of anyone that was working on this, and they're like, no, it sounds cool, but no one's working on it. And then I think a couple days later, they were like, oh, maybe you should talk to this person in the PowerShell team. So then we got looped in with the PowerShell team. And then that's how we kind of started explaining the project and our approach. And then they started inviting us to, do code reviews and stuff like that, just to see where we were going and to keep us on track as far as, how they want DSC resources to be written. So, and yeah, from there, most of the work we did was with the PowerShell team, or I'm not sure their official name, their team's official name, but yeah, the PowerShell team. Yeah, sorry, I just lost.
We know who you're talking
about. I think it was during the PowerShell Summit in Europe. I was watching a video that they posted from that where Jeffrey Snover was talking about DSC, and he's mentioned that DSC was not yet part of the common engineering criteria, but that it will be. It's like in some kind of pre-state, and because it's in that pre-state, I would think that teams like the Exchange team would be thinking about providing DSC resources. So I'm kind of surprised that you just took it and ran with it, and here it is. That's really cool.
Yeah. I think it was like we both thought this was pretty cool, and we wanted to be the ones to do it. I'm sure if we hadn't done it, someone else would have done it. Maybe within the Exchange product group, or once someone had a need for it, they would have done it. But we just wanted to be on the bleeding edge of something, and just hopped right in. So
that's super cool.
Exactly.
I wonder if have you gotten a feel from your peers? Are there other PFEs that are building resources for DSC for different products?
Yeah, I've talked to one who's really interested in doing one for SharePoint, but I think like a lot of people just are really not sure like what DSE is and like what it can do.
Okay.
It's so but yeah, like I wouldn't be surprised if a SharePoint one gets someone PFE does a one for SharePoint here soon.
Yeah, I can see there being a lot of demand for that type of thing. Once people understand what it is they're missing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now, Mike had a question in the chat room, and his question was, do you use the resource only for the initial configuration or also to correct configuration problems after the fact? And I would think the answer to that would be both, but I don't know.
Yeah, for my customer, they're definitely going to be running it nonstop. I mean, they're going to have one script that does like the pre-installation stuff, and then they'll have another script that does the post-installation stuff, and eventually, hopefully, we'll have one that does the installation too. But yeah, my customer has 120 servers that service 200,000 mailboxes, and they're heavily customized, so they have to. I mean, a lot of the stuff they absolutely have to make certain is, the configuration is sticking for.
So did you
Yeah, and I
find
would
yourself
imagine that-
writing individual configuration documents for individual servers, or were you able to have a group of servers that are all getting the same auth file from the pull server, or what's that look like?
So it's actually broken out. Essentially, for like one configuration script, the one that's doing all the post-installation configuration, we have the configuration script and then the configuration data file. And the way I structured it, I was able to get all 120 servers into just those two files.
Nice.
And it took some thought because like a lot of the servers have the exact same settings. Some will have settings for a specific Active Directory site. So 50 or 60 servers may share some common settings, but then another 50 or 60 servers are going to have some different settings. So I had to figure out how to break that up. And the way I ended up doing it was having multiple hash tables within the configuration data file, or multiple nodes within the configuration data file. So instead of just having a all nodes node for everything, I have different nodes for different site-specific settings or cluster-specific settings for different clusters and stuff like that.
Okay. And then your configuration document, you're basically saying, if it's this configuration type, then it gets these settings.
Yeah, essentially, wherever I could in the configuration script, I just hard-coded stuff. If it was going to be the same for every server, I'd hard-code it. If not, I'd put it in the configuration document. And like an example is like under the all nodes node, I might have a node for server 1, and then as a sibling of all nodes, I might have a node for like client for site 1 servers.
Okay.
So within the node itself, like server 1, I have a property that is used as an identifier, so that we can reference that later. Be like, go, this server's in site 1. Go get site 1's settings.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, does the customers that you're working with right now, are they there? Do they believe in and understand the reasons for using DSC, or do you foresee that there's going to be some more education yet? For example, somebody could get in and say, "Hey, I'm going to go to the GUI or even run a script and change some configuration," not realizing that the next time that DSC does a test, it's going to revert that setting.
Right. Well, so they actually haven't done their deployment yet. They're just starting to deploy the operating system. So we actually haven't even got to the Exchange configuration phase yet.
But I guess education is a part of this as well, right?
Yeah, I've kind of been gradually trying to bring them in. Last week, I gave them their initial, just overview on DSC, just, trying trying to keep it as general as possible and not digging into specifics on different resources. And then next, I'm gonna start just talking about the Exchange resources themselves and how I model them, and then at the same time, so in consulting, I mean in PFE too, if we write a solution for the customers, we need to make sure that they know how to run it, if we're not there anymore. So education is definitely key.
Yep, that makes sense for sure. So cool. Is there anything else that we want to cover on the Exchange resource kit? Then I figure we might talk just a bit about BitLocker as well.
Jason,
so,
do you have anything?
I don't have anything else.
So is there anything left to do on this, or is it, as released, it's pretty much, you said it covers 100% of the configuration, so...
Yeah, so right now, something I'm working on is automation for jet stress, which is basically a tool that is used to you use it before actually deploying Exchange or before actually installing Exchange to verify the performance on your disks to make sure they meet the I/O requirements that you spec'd out for the server. So the scripts I'm putting together and resources that I'm putting together for that are going to be definitely one-time stuff. But the reason I chose to use DSE for that is because it's really easy to remote stuff to other servers, since it's all just running in a local process on those servers. So I chose to go that way. So that's something I'm working on, and hopefully it'll be in a future X-Exchange module. And then, eventually we'd really like to get a setup resource, but we've hit some issues with that. So, trying to work through those.
Gotcha. Well, cool. So, tell us, I guess, a little bit about the BitLocker one, and then we'll kind of wrap it up.
All right. So the BitLocker, the reason I wrote that was specifically for Exchange, but it could definitely be used by anyone who uses BitLocker. Essentially just has 3 resources, and they correspond to BitLocker commandlets, kind of like the Exchange commandlets do. But there's the 2 ones are ones for configuring the TPM chip, which is pretty simple, just corresponds to the initialize-TPM commandlet. And then the other one, BitLocker, I want to say it's enable-BitLocker, but I can't remember the full name. But basically just takes all the same parameters you would use for enable BitLocker. But the cool part, the resource that I think is cool in there is the auto BitLocker one, which basically will detect disks that should have BitLocker on them and don't, and automatically puts BitLocker on them. And
what is the definition of that?
What's that?
What's the definition of should have?
Yeah, so it's basically disks of a certain type. So it's I'd have to pull up the documentation for it, but it's either like fixed or data disks. So when you run like get dash volume, your disks will come back as a certain type. So you can pass in what type the disk should be. You can pass in a minimum size for the disk, like you only want disks that are bigger than 1 terabyte to get auto BitLockered. The main reason I wrote that resource is, and I have a kind of a sibling resource in the X-Exchange module called Auto Mount Point. But Exchange 2013 has this concept of auto reseed, where your databases have multiple copies, and you can also have a failed or a standby spare disk. And if you have a disk failure, Exchange automatically maps that spare disk back into production and then reseeds the database from another server. But then what the administrator has to do is they come along and they pull that failed disk, put the new disk back in. They have to assign anywhere from like 3 to 5 mount points to the single disk, format it, and then add BitLocker to it. So it's not a huge deal, but in a Exchange environment with 6,000 disks, it could be could happen semi-frequently.
Sure.
So with these two resources, what happens is the admin basically just pulls the failed disk, puts in the new disk. The Exchange Auto Mount Point resource will detect that there's a disk in there that meets the similar criteria that I was describing, and doesn't have any mount points, and it'll go ahead and just give it the mount points it should have and format it. And then the next thing is BitLocker, or the auto BitLocker will detect that disk is, it's a formatted volume, it has mount points, but it's not BitLockered, and it should be, and it applies BitLocker. So really all the admin has to do is just pull the disk and put the new disk in.
Nice.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about the reversibility of resources? So, for example, do you have an ensure for your resource? So you could say, ensure BitLocker is absent. I mean, do you always write your resources to be reversible? Because at least with some of the resources I've written, making them reversible didn't make any sense. Because, if you're configuring a disk, well, I mean, what do you do? Unconfigure the disk? I mean, when are you going to do that?
Let's unformat that thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Unpartition it.
Yeah, I don't think I don't know, Mike. Do any of our resources have ensure?
Yeah, only a couple of them. Most of the stuff that's configured is there and it's staying while Exchange is there. Your Exchange server object, you're not gonna tell it to be absent and just go away.
Absent.
Yeah. So anyone that any resource that corresponds to something that's.
What about install time stuff though? I mean, I can imagine how you may want to change roles of servers and add servers and maybe change the architecture a little bit. Does that make sense?
That could possibly go into a setup type resource. I mean, if that's something people would want, I think that would make sense. But we do have ensure in a couple of them, instances of receive connector, which is you have to create one of those to receive SMTP mail. And there's some out of the box, but some people delete some and some people create new ones.
Okay.
So we added ensure in there because people may want to get rid of some and add in new ones. There's a couple other ones, but for the most part, it didn't make a whole lot of sense.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I've found too. Sometimes you're configuring something and it's hard to imagine ever reversing that, or
right,
that would ever be desirable.
Yeah. And that's something, I mean, I think there's a couple resources too that probably could use it. Like the resource for creating mailbox databases. I didn't actually add in an ensure property, although it could easily use it, just because my customer didn't really have a need for it. But if that's something the community wants, it would be easy to add stuff in. And yeah, it kind of leads me to, definitely want feedback from people. I've gotten a lot of views on the content we've put out, but I haven't really heard too much back from the community. So, I'm not really sure if people are using it or if people are having trouble with it or whatnot.
So
or
what
if people
is
have
the
suggestions
best way
go ahead.
to get feedback to you? What's the best way to get feedback to you?
Well, one way is just if you go to the download page for any DSC module, like X Exchange, there's a couple tabs. One of them's description, the other one's Q&A. So you can ask questions there. And if I don't get or if we don't get notifications for that, the PowerShell team will tell us to go check those out. So. And then I also have a blog series that I've started on the X Exchange module, and I now have four posts in that. So that's another place that people can ask questions.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I'm looking to see if there's anything on the PowerShell gallery that tells people who to contact or what. I see contact owners link on there. Not sure where that goes yet. That may go to some generic mailbox.
Yeah.
As opposed to the TechNet
Which page
download page. PowerShell gallery. So
okay. Yeah.
Which is what PowerShell Git uses.
Yeah.
So you can type install -module -name X Exchange and it's done. And there's metadata on all kinds of metadata on the website behind that. And so there is a lot of information about it there, but it doesn't seem to have like a support link per se. It has a contact owners. I have to mention that. That might be. It does have your names though. Just noticed that.
Oh, you're looking at the actual Exchange PowerShell gallery. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, which is still under Exchange 2010, which you need to get that updated.
No. What I'm looking at is different. It's the PowerShell Resource Gallery. I don't know if you're in the chat room. I put the link in the chat room just now.
Oh, I'm not in the chat room. I tried to get in there and I couldn't figure it out. So.
Yeah, I know. It was a bit of a pain. Sorry about that. But anyway, long story short, use the Q&A tab on the TechDebt Script Center, or leave comments on your blog.
Yeah, so essentially, I mean, for any of the modules, I mean, not just the Exchange and BitLocker, but any DSE module, use the Q&A tab on the download. Those are all monitored. And that's actually, I asked the PowerShell team, how do I get feedback, or how do we get feedback? And that's what they said. So,
okay, cool.
You should use the Q&A tab. So, if you have suggestions for how we can, make feedback easier for people, though, we'd like to hear that too. So,
are there any resources that would be valuable for people who are not running Exchange on site? I mean, I'm not an Exchange administrator, so I don't know. Like, if you have Office 365, I don't know what sort of configuration a customer would have to do. But is there anything with your resources that work for Office 365 or BPOSD or any of those types of situations, or does it even make sense?
Yeah, I don't have any customers that use Office 365, so I have no idea if these would work.
Yeah, I mean, the module as it is definitely focused on Exchange on-prem.
Okay, sure.
And a lot of these resources are configuring stuff that if you're on Office 365, you don't have to worry about. That's server-side stuff that's getting managed.
That's what Microsoft takes care of. That's what you're paying Microsoft to do for you, so you don't have to deal with it. Okay.
But I'm actually interested in looking into what we could do with Office 365 and Exchange for DSC. And I'm going to start reaching out to people and trying to get feedback on that, because I don't do a whole lot of Office 365 work myself either. So I'm going to have to reach out to other people and be like, hey, what do you guys have to configure all the time? And does it make sense to put that into put any of that into a DSC resource?
Right. And then what do you put it on? What do you run it against?
Yeah, I can't visualize. I'm sure it would work somehow, but I'm having trouble visualizing how it would work in straight, just fully hosted Office 365. I can definitely see it in. Yeah, I can definitely see it in a hybrid solution, though.
Right.
But definitely requires some thought.
Cool. Well, hey guys, before we let you go, thank you very much for your time, but there's a couple of questions that we need to ask you. So, Mike, you'll go first. If you could be a superhero or have a superpower, what would it be and why?
Man, that's a
important
weird question. Yeah.
Everybody gets it.
It's an historic question. We've been asking this question for first-time guests for probably 6 years.
Yeah, I would probably, I don't know, I'm just going to throw out super intelligence. You can never have too much knowledge, so.
Let's see, what do we call that? Omniscience? That's what
that might work.
Down. All right, Jason, same question to you. If you could have a superpower or be a superhero, who would it be and why?
Well, I would want Jedi powers. I don't want to be able to just put my hand out there and pick up the remote control, or pick up the car keys, pick up my kid, just shoot,
Especially the kids. They'll be like, Daddy, throw me again. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I would definitely, I could do that. That would be a good one.
We actually haven't had too many people pick Jedi powers.
No, we haven't.
I think we've
That's
had
surprising.
At least one other person. The most popular answers we get are Superman and Batman.
Superman, Batman.
And Iron Man.
Yep.
Those are the three.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the top three. But we've also had like R2D2.
Yep. Time travel. Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, that was one.
We've had a lot. Anyway, cool. Mike, Jason, thank you guys so much for sharing what you've done with the for doing it in the first place, for making the Exchange Resource Kit, but for sharing the time with us too. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. This is the best podcast out there. It's my favorite one.
Oh, well, thank you.
Appreciate that. Thanks a lot, man. All right. That is the show. Thank you, guys. That was awesome.
All right, guys.
All right, enjoyed it.
And we will shoot you a link whenever it is up on the website, probably a week or so.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
All right, good night.
We've got Jeffrey Snover coming up.
Yes, next week. No, week after.
Week after
The
would be
20th.
Thanksgiving, wouldn't it?
Correct, yes. So a week from today.
Okay, so the 20th.
So
Awesome.
tell your friends and neighbors and family members. They probably won't care, to be perfectly honest. But the people that will care, tell them. All right. And Mike's got a new book out. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, the PowerShell TFM 4. Who did you write that with? Did you write that with Jason Helmick, Mike?
I think he did. See if it's got it written up on here.
Is this a different mic?
Yes.
Mike,
Yeah, different
I'm
Mike.
sorry. Sorry,
We're
there's
multitasking.
Mike Robbins is in the chat room. He's a PowerShell MVP.
Ah, got it.
He just wrote Windows PowerShell TFM 4th edition, or co-authored it. I think Jason Helmick, I think, also wrote it with
That
him.
is correct. Jason is the co-author.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. So good night to everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, chat room. Thank you guys for participating. And good night, Mike and Jason.
All right. Good night, guys.
Night.
Good night.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. Good night, all.